Welcome into the American Huddle as we look ahead to 5 games on Saturday, 3 of those in conference. Alongside college football analyst Andy Gresh, I'm Haley Outen. Let's get right to it with the marquee matchup, 7-0 USF at 6-1 Houston. While the Bulls are undefeated, Houston seems to have the hot hand riding into this matchup. Their offense has been on fire, scoring at least 40 points in 7 straight games. USF, a team that has rallied back from 3 fourth-quarter deficits to win this season. Andy, what will be the key for the Bulls to get off to a better start?
Well, they got to come out and have balance. They need to honestly possess the ball in the first quarter. Find a way to get a 6 or 7 minute drive, put 7 on the board, and then you put the pressure on a Houston team that's really rounding into shape, Haley. And I think that, an early lead for USF is going to go a long way. And we know they have the ability to be able to come back, but it's time to flip the script. Houston, they're starting to find it offensively. D'Eriq King is playing like a Player of the Year candidate. We know he can run it. He's been flinging the pill all over the lot and getting big plays from his wide receivers. So I think for UCF, they got to tackle better. That's been an issue for them defensively this year. And an early lead would go a long way to giving them a chance to be able to win that game. I like Houston in this one, even though USF has the ability to come back. I just think Houston's rolling right now.
You mentioned the Houston wide receiver group, and they had 3 wide receivers reach the 100-yard mark last week against Navy. Marquez Stevenson, Keith Corbin, and Courtney Lark. How big of a handful will this group be, for the USF secondary?
I think it's going to be a big handful because it's 3 guys who can line up in different places and formations, and it's guys who can all catch and run, and that's the big thing. You get a 15-yard out cut and you miss that tackle. Those guys have the ability to take it up the sideline, and they've got that long speed that they can throw in as well. So I expect D'Eriq King to attack short, then maybe press him deep, and then the intermediate areas, he's going to be able to really feast, I think. And if you're not going to tackle well, those wide receivers are going to get big yards.
USF and Houston, a 3:30 p.m. Eastern kick on ABC or ESPN2. Cincinnati looking to bounce back after their first loss of the season on the road this week at SMU. Now, last week against Temple, quarterback Desmond Ridder was 14 of 33 for just 111 yards, also struggled on the ground, running for only 9 yards. What lessons does the freshman QB take from Temple and apply at SMU?
Well, I think it's different defenses, so I'm not expecting the kind of pushback from SMU that Temple did in terms of pushing back against Cincinnati. Now, that said, I think poise, number one. Hey, you went through it. It's no different than any of us in any part of our life where you go through an experience where you kind of take it on the chin. How do you play with resolve, and do you get better? Number 2, I think that Desmond Ridder has got to have confidence in himself. Don't be afraid to throw the football because you made some mistakes on the road. They need him to play a high level of football, and they need him to be a factor in the run game as well. So I don't think SMU is going to provide that kind of pushback, but if it gets into Desmond Ridder's head, it's going to level it out and really make this a ball game.
Cincinnati at SMU, a 3:30 Eastern kick on CBS Sports Network. 2-5 Tulane and 1-6 Tulsa will meet Saturday. 2 teams desperately in search of a win if they have any hope of reaching bowl eligibility this season. Andy, who gets it done?
Tulane, I think, they've won football games this year. I know Tulsa's been close, really close. They were close against USF. And when you look at them, they're fighting, but unlike USF, they're not able to push through in the fourth quarter. So I think Tulane ends up getting this victory, and I'd still love to see more out of the passing game from Tulane, but I think I'll just have to wait for 2019 for that to happen.
Tulane and Tulsa, a 7 p.m. Eastern kick on ESPNU. Stepping out of conference, UConn will host UMass this week. The Huskies seeming to benefit off that bye week leading up to USF putting on what was their most impressive performance so far this season. Until last Saturday, the Huskies hadn't held an opponent to fewer than 49 points, and they did so against a top 25 team. How can UConn build off of last weekend?
Well, I really think it's about their defense, and I know they played a bunch of young guys early. They've now sat those kids down to put them on layaway and redshirt them. So you've got some older players in there in this UConn defense. And I think structurally against USF, they were pretty good in terms of holding the fort. David Pindell, who I know was on the honor roll this week in the American, running around making plays on offense. They're going to need a ton because UMass, they can score. They've got a wide receiver in Andy Isabella who's going to be a handful. UConn, maybe they need to run the ball a little bit, keep that UMass offense off the field. A winnable game this week for the Huskies.
Nice little New England matchup. You can catch it at noon Eastern on ESPNU. Lastly, Navy versus Notre Dame in San Diego. Head coach Ken Niumatalolo's squad sitting at an uncharacteristic 2-5 record heading to Southern California. What has not been going right for the midshipmen this season?
Well, Haley, I think it's much more about their defense than it is their offense, because we know the Navy offense, difficult to prepare for. They've got multiple quarterbacks that they can play. I think the issue is the game gets tilted. You get down 2 touchdowns, you get into 3rd and long like they did this past week, and then you got to drop back and throw, and that's not Navy's game. They need to play close. They've got to get some good defense. They're going to need a Herculean effort against Notre Dame. We know what Notre Dame has at stake. It'd be great to see Navy ruin that for them. And think about it, if you're a UCF fan, you're rooting for Navy hard this week. Put that 1 in the loss column for Notre Dame, and it makes UCF's path easier to maybe getting to the college football playoff.
The Irish and the Mids squaring off at 8 p.m. Eastern on CBS. Andy, as we sit here in Week 9, which team has been the biggest surprise to you up to this point?
You know, I would have said Cincinnati, and I love what Luke Fickell and crew have done down there. But boy, I got to give Jeff Collins and Temple a ton of credit. I mean, they're winning games in different ways. They're winning games in overtime. That's a blood and guts crew, and they've gotten better ever since they got off of that bad start. So I'm going to have to go with Temple with a nod to Cincinnati.
Temple certainly turning their season around after the tough start that they had. Looking at this week's games, though, who would you put on upset alert?
Well, I'd love to put Notre Dame on upset alert, I'll tell you that. But, you know, in terms of the conference games, I would say, and look, I know USF is ranked and Houston isn't. But to me, there isn't a big difference between those two. So I'm going to say USF. They're the team right now that I look at and say, okay, yeah, you're ranked. You're going to play Houston. They can throw it. The quarterback's playing well. I'm going to say that the Bulls are the danger Will Robinson game of the week.
Now let me ask you this. If Houston wins against USF, will the Cougs break into the top 25?
If they don't, then I will need to be screaming at the voters one more time. Yes, if they win, Haley, they're in the top 25.
They're not in the top 25 next week. I'll be staying home.
Yeah,
very scary when you
you know what? All you have to do is just slide out of the way, and I'll just look into the camera and rip those people one more time. They're not that blind. Like, I know they want to get into the press box and get their chicken wings and whatnot, but come on, they know what's going on. At least you'd think so relative to Houston.
And on that note, we're looking forward to a great day across the American in Week 9 of the college football season. And of course, we'll be back next week to break down all of the action. On behalf of Andy Gresh, I'm Haley Outen. Have a great rest of your weekend.